Hi everyone, you're very welcome to the Make Code for Microbit Teacher Package. My name is Neve and I'll be taking you through the beginner's package. So I suppose the first thing I'm going to get started with is what exactly is Make Code for Microbit? Well, a microbit is literally one of these little tiny microcontrollers. That's what the physical microbit looks like. And majority of this teacher package will be based on using the virtual microbit. So you won't even need a real microbit. However, if you do have a real physical microbit, or if you do have that equipment or hardware in your school, feel free to use it and add it in as extension tasks as you go on. Okay, so that's what a microbit is. And basically, we're learning through this package how to code the microbit to do different things. For example, show words, show icons, show numbers, and do different things like that. Okay, so there's three different versions of the Make code for microbit platform. There's the browser-based version, there's the app version, and then there's also Microbit Classroom, which is in beta at the moment. So that's also a nice option, especially if you're remote teaching or learning. Okay, so I'm going to go through all three options and then you can decide which best suits the class that you have. So I'm first of all going to take you through the browser-based version. Okay, and all versions are very similar. It's just how you get into them, essentially, that differs. So I'm going to type in Microsoft Make Code Microbit, and this will open up a couple of different options, but we're going to go down to this one, Microsoft Make Code for Microbit. And this is the home page of the browser-based version. Now, one thing I will mention is if you do decide to use the browser based version, it relies heavily on the internet. So just ensure that you have a good internet connection with your devices. Otherwise, if you drop off the internet, your code might be lost in the process. Okay, so that's just one thing I want to point out. So this is the home page of the browser based version. There's lots of different games and tutorials there that you can follow, and that will take you step by step through how to do different things. However, I'm going to hop straight on to the work area. So I'm going to click on new project and I'm going to type in a name. So I'm just going to put in Neve and create. It'll always prompt you to save under a certain name. So you can decide on your name yourself. And this is the work area as such. So this is where all the coding and magic happens. So over on the left hand side, we've got our microbit. So that's our virtual microbit. So a couple of moments ago, I showed you what the physical microbit looked like, and I said that it wasn't essential. Everything in this package will be able to be done through the virtual microbit. So this is the virtual microbit over on the left-hand side. It has two programmable buttons, A and B. It also has 25 red LED lights. So these little gray areas here, when you program them, you can get them to light up and do different things. And along the bottom, it has pins. Okay. Then there's also a bar here that has other options. So you can stop your simulator, you can restart it, you can mute the audio, and you can go full screen. Okay, so that's our microbit itself, and that's some of the different features of the microbit. In the middle here, you can see there's lots of different categories. And if you click into any of the different categories, that's where the blocks are that you're going to use to get started coding. Okay. And then over here to the right hand side, so this area here, this is our workspace. Okay, so this is where we're going to build out all of our programs and we're going to drag and drop our blocks and connect them together. Okay, so that's the workspace, and that's quite similar in every single version of Make Code for Microbit. Now, just one thing I want to mention also is that we're going to be using block based coding because this is the beginner package. So we're going to be using block based coding. And this is what block based coding looks like. It's just blocks and they fit into each other just like a jigsaw. They slot into each other. And that's essentially how block-based coding works. It's a little bit more difficult than that, but each week I'm going to go in depth in the videos and take the students through how to do different things. So don't be worrying. But that's what block-based coding looks like. However, there's also the option to do syntax coding with MakeCode for Microbit. Okay. And in order to do the syntax, which is slightly more advanced, you could use JavaScript or you can use Python. Okay, so I'm going to click over into JavaScript now and just show you what syntax code looks like. So this is what real software engineers use in order to code programs. Okay, so this is what one line of syntax code would look like. And then there's also another syntax code language available here, and it's Python. Look ever so slightly different. However, it's based on syntax code as well. So that's advanced, okay? But we're going to be focusing on block-based code because this is a beginner's guide to coding using MakeCode for Microbit. So don't get too worried just yet because I know that's a bit daunting when you see it there first off. However, in a year's time, you never know, you might be able to transition the students that you have into syntax code. So I just wanted to show you that it is a feature that's there, and perhaps you have some very strong students in your class that needs a bit of extra and bit of an extra challenge. How maybe get them to start off using block-based code and then get them to toggle over and back between, we'd say, either JavaScript or Python, just so that they get a feel and see actually what it looks like in real syntax code. So again, I'm just pointing that out for you. However, we're going to be focusing on block-based code for this package. Okay, so that's basically the browser-based version. You've got your microcontroller or your simulator, your microbit on the left-hand side, your categories in the middle, and your workspace on the right-hand side. Okay, and this is the work area as such. If you want to go back to home, you just click on the home icon and that'll bring you back to home where there's loads of different tutorials, live coding, games, radio games, etc. Okay, and as you can see, the project that I was just working on is saved there under the name that I titled it Neve. However, if I click out of this browser now, it won't save my work because I'm using the browser-based version. So when I come back in a week's time to do some more coding, I'll have to start a complete new project. Okay, so that's just not one of the downfalls of browser based, but it's just one thing to mention in terms of if you're using browser based, that your projects won't get saved. They'll be wiped the next time you come. Okay, so that's the browser based version. Now I've the application already downloaded and pinned here, so I'm going to click on it. So this is the app version. Very similar, almost identical to the browser based. The only difference is that it doesn't use the internet because once it's fully downloaded, it doesn't require internet. So there's loads of different projects there that I've done 7 days ago, 5 days ago, etc. So they'll stay there forever. Okay. Again, the homepage is identical in that it has all the tutorials, the live coding, the games that the browser based version has. So I'm not going to go through that in depth. I'm going to click on new project. I'm going to call my project this time N, and going to click on create, and it's going to bring me into the work area again. Okay, again, almost identical to the browser-based version. You've got your microbit or your microcontroller to the left-hand side, your categories to the middle, and your workspace or work area to the right-hand side. Once again, you can toggle between blocks and JavaScript, and also Python. So you've block-based coding and you've syntax coding. Okay, and basically it's more or less the exact same. The only difference is it doesn't rely on the internet, and that once you, we'd say, exit out of the application, it'll save your project so that when you come in next week, you can just click on home and you can decide, I want to go back to project N or whatever you were working on, and your code will still be there. Okay, so that is our browser-based version and our app version. And finally, I'm going to take you through Microbit Classroom. And this is a really nice version. It's still only in beta, so there can be some glitches with it. So, how will I say, bear with it. It hasn't been released for public use just yet, or it hasn't been publicized. Um, but it is really, really good in that if you're remote teaching, you can follow step by step what your students are doing without having your students in the same room or maybe even in the same county as you. Okay, so I'm going to click out and I'm going to type in Microbit Classroom. And I'm going to click into Microbit Classroom. So the first thing you need to do as the teacher, you need to set up your classroom. So depending on the activity, I'm going to call this week one. Week one, I'm going to choose make code because we're using block based, and that's what they mean here. Make code is your block based version, whereas Python would be your syntax. Okay, and that's the more advanced. So that's a little bit down the line. So I'm going to click in on make code and I'm going to launch my classroom. Okay, so my classroom is just launched. Here are the instructions, so you can go through the instructions as you wish. Your dashboard is here. So this is what you need to share with the students in order for your students to join your classroom. Okay, so the students need to go to microbit.org/join, and then they need to type in the classroom name and the PIN. So the name is generally four random words. So purple rabbit, airplane, saxophone, and the pin. Okay. And then as your students type in their classroom name and their pin, they'll start to join down here. So you'll see all your students joining. So you'll know who has joined and who hasn't joined. So for example, if you have 30 students in your class, you'll see there's only 17 joined, 18 joined, and you'll know then when everyone is in that you can get started and move off this dashboard screen. So that's where you can share the details with the students in order to get them into your classroom. Okay? Then the editor is where you can do some code. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type in, this is an in private browser. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard, microbit.org/join. So microbit.org/join. And I'm going to join the classroom as a participant. Okay, so it's an in private browser, so it won't catch on that I'm also the teacher. Okay, so it was purple rabbit, purple rabbit, airplane, saxophone, and then the pin 989616. 989616. Perfect. And then continue. Now it'll prompt me for my name. So just get your students to type in their first name. And now I've joined as a student. Okay. So now I'm on as a student and the teacher classroom is here. So I'm going to go back into dashboard and I'm going to scroll down, and now you can see what it looks like when someone has joined. So again, as your students go, they'll all pop up here. Okay, so it says in progress, so it means that I'm active at the moment. It does go and says offline if you leave it for a few minutes and you haven't been working on anything. So it lets your teacher know if you're not working away as well. So there's no hiding with this one. Okay, so that's your teacher editor. So now I'm going to show you, we'd say, if I, as the teacher, wanted to demonstrate something to the student, I can I can show them this and then I can push out the code onto their screens. So they could be in 5 different households, in different rooms, and I can push out the exact same code onto every student's screen. So I'm going to just put in a string, and I'm going to put in DreamSpace as my string, and I'm going to share the code with my students. So I'm going to click share code with my students. Because I'm the only student in my classroom at the moment, I'm going to send it to myself. So I'm going to send it, and it pops up now to let me know that my code has been sent to the selected students. Now, you can send to all students, or you can send to specific students. So because I'm the only one there, it didn't give the option. But if you had 30 students in your classroom and maybe 2 students were finding it a little bit tricky and needed some conferencing or scaffolding, and you wanted to just send it to those 2 students, you can just click on those 2 students rather than sending it out to everybody. And that is worth noting, because if you send code out to everybody and everybody accepts it, it'll delete and wipe all the code that they have done themselves. So it deletes all their own code and it only leaves the code you've sent to them. So they could be working on something really, really good and had loads of code. And the minute they accept your code, their code will immediately be wiped. So I just want you to kind of to be aware of that before you send out code in the future. So I've sent my code as the teacher. Now I'm going to go into the student version, and it now says your teacher has sent you some code and you have to click use code in order to use the code. So you have, well, you don't really have the option of not using the code, but once I click use code, any code that I have had on my screen will get deleted. So use code, and now it pops up the teacher's code. And now it automatically plays because I'm using the input on start. So immediately once it starts, it's going to show the string DreamSpace. And over here, it's showing the string DreamSpace. So I'm going to restart the simulator just so you can see that. And then it goes letter by letter through DreamSpace. Okay, so that's Classroom. Another feature of the classroom is students' code. So, as the teacher, this is the teacher profile. So, as the teacher, I can look at the students' code. So, at the moment, Neve is the only one that is in my classroom. But when I click on Neve, so if I had other options, you'd have to toggle between what student you wanted to look at. But I can see now that Neve has this code on her screen. Okay. So I'm going to go in and add some more code onto the student screen. And then I'm going to come back here and see has it updated. Okay. And then it just gives you an idea that if you were remote teaching, you could see your students' code and they could be at home in their bedrooms doing their coding tasks. Okay, or they could be in their kitchen or their sitting room. They don't have to be in the same classroom. They don't have to be in the same room or really even in the same area. So this works really well when you're working remotely. Okay, so I'm going to add in an LED. Just going to do the 4 corners, and I'm going to write how are you? Okay. And I'm going to let that refresh on mine. And now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to look at Neve's code on the teacher profile. So I can see every change that Neve makes, and I can see if if there's no change made, and then I can push out code. So I can see if a student's struggling. Okay. And I can see that they've got on well with that. And then I could go back and send out more code to students if I wanted. Or I could share Neve's code. So we'd say one student is getting on really, really well, and perhaps I wanted to share their code with the rest of the students. I could share that code with the other students. Again, though, because I am the only participant in this classroom, it won't allow me to do that. But if we had, for argument's sake, maybe 15 or 20 in the classroom, I could share that code with 1 or 2 individuals, or I could share with the entire classroom. Okay, so that's some basically some quick tips on how to use Microbit Classroom. Again, I'm going to reiterate that it is in beta form, so it does have some glitches every now and then because they're still working on it. It's still a work in progress. It hasn't been fully launched for public use just yet. But you can get started using it if you feel like it would work for your classroom and the situation you find yourself in. Okay, so your instructions, your editor is where you, the teacher, can do different tasks and you can send it out to your students. So that's your editor as teacher. Your dashboard is how you can get your students to join, and you can see who has joined and if they're still active or in progress or if they're offline. And then you can go in and check your students' code in the students' code area, go through all your different students. And finally, you can save your classroom. So, again, this is a nice one in that you can save your classroom and all your students' code. And then when the students come back, maybe next week when it's your designated time for coding, then you can take up from where you left off. Okay, so that's our three different versions of the Make Code for Microbit platform. We've the browser based, which relies heavily on internet. You've got the app version, which is quite good if you can download them onto the devices because then your code gets saved so that each time you um, visit the code again, it'll still be there. And you've got Microbit Classroom, which works really well if you're teaching remotely or if you can't be quite close to the students. Okay, so there are three different versions. I'm going to now get started going through week by week what the activities are. So that's really it for now. Thanks very much.